Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lukas Wacker, and with me, as always, we have Kyle Cushman. And man, what a weekend we had at the NASCAR Daytona Road Course. Oh my goodness. Where do we even start with this? I mean, there is so many twists and turns, literally and figuratively, lefts and rights this past weekend. And man, I'm excited for this episode. Kyle, I don't know about you, but this past weekend of racing was excellent across the board. All three series delivered different characteristics to each race, and we'll dive into each of them to varying degrees. Obviously, the Cup Series being the main one, but we had some interesting storylines, mainly in the Xfinity Series on who won that one, and of course the Truck Series to round it out. But before we get into all that, how you doing today, Kyle?
I'm doing good. Yeah, a busy week for myself here. It was nice having reading week last week, and then it's just right back to the gauntlet. But it was a nice weekend of racing. It was definitely different to have a road course that early in the schedule. That felt a little bit strange, but it was nice. We had a nice weekend of racing. We had a lot of different storylines. We had a lot of different contenders. So it was a great weekend of racing, and I'm very excited to break it all down here today.
Yeah. Oh my God, what a weekend it was. Like, the road course last year, we were like, when we did our track ranking list, if you haven't checked that out, go check it out, because we did put in the Daytona road course into our tier list for the NASCAR tracks. And we put the road course in there, and it was an average race. That's what we kind of decided as it was. But I think this weekend kind of maybe bumps it up to good. We'll have to revisit that maybe come next season if it does come back on the calendar for 2022. But
running a 750 horsepower package makes the track better?
You would think,
wow.
It just seems like a no-brainer, but at least NASCAR is taking that to heart this season. And the road courses, if we get that week in and week out with the 6 road courses in the regular season, and of course the Charlotte Roval later on, but we're going to have a pretty fantastic season. And, I texted you during the race, Kyle, and I'm like, oh man, if we have Chase Elliott and Martin Truex Jr. show the entire year, it's just going to be boring, these road courses. It's just not going to take
that excitement. Predictable.
Yeah, I called it predictable, and as soon as that happened, chaos ensued, it seemed. So let's get into what happened in the race, and we'll start off with the race winner today. We're going to do our race recaps a little bit differently this season. We're going to start off with the heavy thing right out of the gate, so you guys don't have to wait about 40 minutes while we do our race recaps. But Christopher Bell wins his first career Cup Series race. Unbelievable. I mean, the fact that we have 2 first-time winners to start off the season, the first time since 1950 that has happened, that is an insane amount of time, and I'm so excited for Christopher Bell. Funny stats that came along with this as well. In the second race of the season, in all 3 series, the 3 national series that he has participated in, he's won his first race in those series in the second race of the season, being the Truck Series, Xfinity, and Cup Series. Not in his first season necessarily. Of course, Christopher Bell, not a rookie this season, in his second year in the Cup Series. But nonetheless, that second race of the season seems to be where Christopher Bell's season takes off. And I didn't really see this coming. Maybe you did more so than I did. Well, definitely you saw this more than I did as a possibility. But the road course, Christopher Bell, we predicted that he was going to be a first-time winner this season in our NASCAR season preview for the Cup Series, but we didn't have him winning at the Daytona Road Course. I had him at Kansas. You had him at New Hampshire. But the Daytona Road Course, I don't think was on our radar, especially so early on in the season with Adam Stevens in their second race together as a partnership. But what more can you say about Christopher Bell here, Kyle? What an incredible performance from start to finish. He was just on rails, it seemed, right there with the likes of the favorites that we saw coming into this race.
Yeah, I think a lot of people thought that there might be some growing pains there moving over to Joe Gibbs Racing. It wouldn't be like an immediate thing where he steps in there and performs like he did at the Xfinity Series level. We all kind of thought that, okay, maybe by like mid-season or maybe even a quarter way through the season, we'd start to see that team really start to find its gear. Second race of the season, though, I don't think many had penciled down. Christopher Bell, he's been very outspoken about how much he used to hate road racing, but over his career, there's been a consistent kind of progression there in his road racing ability. You look at his Truck Series results, solid, and then you got to Xfinity, the first year in Xfinity, solid again, but it was that 2019 season in Xfinity where you really started to find his groove as a road racer, finishing second twice there at Watkins Glen and then Mid-Ohio, and then winning at Road America as well. And let's not forget, Austin Cindric was in that field as well. I believe AJ Allmendinger ran a couple of those races as well.
Most likely.
Matt DiBenedetto was in one of those as well. So there was some legit heavy hitters in those. And Christopher Bell went out and finished top 2 in all 3 races and won one of them as well. So very impressive there. Coming into Levine Family Racing last year, things didn't go the way that a lot of people hoped they would. Got off to a rough start to the season,
yes.
Screwed over their entire season in terms of the qualifying draw, starting from the back and having to work their way forwards, never having a shot at those stage points. But coming into this season, I think a lot of people did have some pretty high expectations for Christopher Bell. And going out and winning in the second race, I think, exceeds any of those possible.
No, I was thoroughly impressed. I don't think Bell's road course abilities were as underrated as what maybe people were seemingly expecting coming into this season. I would see him performing better at the likes of Road America or Watkins Glen, or like the traditional road courses, not like this oval to street to inside the circuit road courses that we see, like the Roval and of course the Daytona road course. I look at those two as kind of varying degrees of success for a lot of drivers, and it's different. I think techniques that are required to maybe excel at those places more so than Watkins Glen, Road America, Mid-Ohio, the likes of those tracks. But Christopher Bell here comes in and steals the show. It's not like this was a fluke victory, everybody.
No, he was like the second best car throughout most of this day.
But would you justify him as the best Gibbs car? There was a lot. They look strong entirely as an organization, because they had at one point before the race turning point, which we'll talk about in a second, they had all 5 cars inside the top 6 or 7 there, and Bell was leading that charge. But Truex was right there in the mix. Kyle Busch, after having his issues early on, he recovered to get a top 5 at that point in time. And then Denny Hamlin seemed like he was kind of in the mix as well, won a stage. So I don't know. Would you justify Christopher Bell as maybe the best Gibbs car out there on Sunday?
On average speed, over 10 laps, he was the number 2 driver in the field, ahead of Truex, ahead of Hamlin, ahead of Kyle Busch, who were all in the top 6 as well. So Gibbs definitely brought the speed to this race. But I still think I'd give the edge to Truex in terms of just kind of best car there. But in terms of handling throughout the race, it was Christopher Bell all the way. When you look at the amount of mistakes that 19 car had throughout the day, just getting involved in different things, and at the end of the race being in a position to potentially take advantage of things and then spinning out, which I'm sure we'll get to later on. But Christopher Bell, yeah, he showed the patience, he showed his road course prowess, and blended it enough with a really strong car to be there when it counted. And even without the chaos at the end, he was still in position to at least finish second, if not continue on and challenge for the win anyways. So absolutely fantastic performance here from Christopher Bell, which just opens up so many possibilities for him throughout this rest of the season. Having the pressure off, we know that 20 cars has had so much pressure over the last few years, just not quite being able to break through for the win early on, and so having to constantly be in kind of that playoff battle with points all season long. Having that pressure off immediately just opens up so many possibilities for the 20 team, for Christopher Bell himself. So a huge victory here early in the season.
I think you just see, I mean, I don't want to harp on it too much, but I think you just see the how much Adam Stevens brings to a team like this, when Chris Gale and Eric Jones, not to slack those two, but they weren't able to deliver last season. No wins for that 20 car. And as soon as they make a switch over there at JGR, it seems like one is trending in the right direction here, at least with the 20 team. We'll see what happens on the 18 side of things with that crew chief swap. But with Adam Stevens here, a 2-time Cup Series championship winning crew chief, and Christopher Bell, they seem to be getting along very nicely, to say the least. And I think the biggest thing that impressed me with Bell from this race was that I don't really see that he put a foot wrong the entire race. He was just consistent. We saw mistakes from Chase Elliott more so than Christopher Bell, which you would not expect necessarily with how much Chase Elliott has excelled on the road course. I mean, he was going for 5 in a row, for crying out loud. So I mean, the favorite was Chase Elliott, but Christopher Bell matching lap times and forcing Elliott into mistake there before that caution for rain, quote unquote. But yeah, I don't know. I was just thoroughly impressed by this 20 car, the entire team. I didn't know if he could have enough at the end. You know, it was Joey Logano's race to lose there in the final laps with how the caution cycled out. But Bell on those fresher tires with that strategy call here, which we'll talk about in a second, I'm sure, was able to chase him down. And it became a penultimate lap pass coming to the white flag. Logano tried his damnedest to try and block him. I'll give him that.
I was getting some flashbacks there, I'm not going to lie.
Oh, I was just like all over the place with my emotions because I'm like, don't you dare wreck him, Logano. Like if he just spins them both and they end up in the wall and then Hamlin comes in third and wins the race. Like it was just all over the place with my emotions. But yeah, Bell was able to execute the pass, chase him down. The fresh tires obviously paid a difference, but that driver of the 20 car, the car itself was better than Logano's the whole day. And it just really paid dividends there in the end.
Yeah, no, a very strong. I think the biggest thing is not just the fact that Bell was kind of there in the conversation for most of the day anyways. It was kind of the veteran presence at the end, not to kind of overstep and recognize that he's got the better car. He's in the better situation as those laps wound down. And it would have been very easy for a guy going for his first ever victory in that situation to kind of overdrive it and either wreck there making the pass or go in too deep into a corner, wheel hop, anything like that. We saw Kyle Larson, who is a very experienced driver by comparison, go out and make a mistake trying to make it pass and set himself up for a shot at the victory as well. So it would have been very easy for Bell at that road course, especially, to go out and make a mistake there as the laps started to wind down there. But instead kind of kept his head cool, recognized that he was in the better position than Logano. If he just kept doing his thing, if he kept in his rhythm, he would get there and he would make the pass. And sure enough, he did so with relative ease. Obviously, there was a lot of blocking going on, but in the grand scheme of things, we've seen a lot more chaotic things happen at end of races, especially at road courses and whatnot. And a very, very impressive drive from Christopher Bell here, especially in those last few laps.
That was the third consecutive race as well. Joey Logano's been passed for the lead for the final pass as well.
That's right.
Yeah, for the championship finale last year in Phoenix. And remember, Logano's only had 3 wins over the past calendar year, basically, and he's in position to win 3 straight here in terms of race times. But he's come short in all 3 of those efforts. With not a lack of effort. He was right up there throughout the entire race. Ran a really solid race. There was Logano. So let's try and look at what the race actually had entailed throughout. Obviously, off the start, it was not a great start for myself personally, both fantasy-wise and for my favorite driver-wise. Kyle Busch has an issue getting into the grass coming out of the final turn. And Michael Mcdowell in the front row, a guy who I had in my fantasy, apparently had a flat tire before they even took the green flag, it seemed.
How that even happens, but...
So that's lovely. Gotta love having no practice, hey? Just gotta love those things. But... unfortunate start there. Kyle Busch would have to fix his damage. Michael Mcdowell would have to recover as well. He had to limp around the entire track to get 4 tires on that thing and get back going again. Luckily for them, a caution would save them. I believe it was for debris, if I'm not mistaken, from McDowell's car.
Yeah, the tire carcass.
Thank God. But yeah, lots of tire issues. That was a big thing early on in this race.
Surprisingly, because we didn't see it a ton in the other races. We saw it here and there.
Not issues, but not issues.
Yeah, exactly. It was a different. It seemed like anybody that kind of locked up and had a flat spot, that tire was done. In just a handful of corners later. And yeah, something very like even De Benedetto having the tire go down and completely ripping off his right rear quarter panel. We hadn't seen any of those kind of issues like that previously. And I don't know if that's maybe due to like the higher horsepower package and maybe lighting up the rear tires a little bit more. There was a lot more complaining about rear tire grip in this one, but yeah, very strange. I wasn't expecting anything like that.
Yeah, Keselowski, De Benedetto, Eric Jones all suffered tire issues very early on in this one. Don't even get me started on Brad Keselowski. I couldn't do.
He was all over the place, man.
That could be an entire episode in itself. The race that man had, and he ended up getting a top 5 finish out of it, which
5th overall in total points earned too. It was nuts.
I don't know how he did it. I said to Kyle, he's not going to be making an appearance on Cush's threes. Well, I could be proven wrong here, so stay tuned for that. We'll see if he does end up on Cush's threes because, man, he had one of the most up and down races I've ever seen across the board in any series. It was just insane. So props to Brad Keselowski right out of the gate here because that was a pretty impressive drive to go from the back to the front. It seemed like at least 5 times throughout the event, from his own errors and to tire letting him down and whatnot. It just seemed like everything happened to Brad Keselowski in this one. And then a debris caution with 5 laps to go in stage 1 kind of set up a sprint to the end of that one where it seemed like it was Chase Elliott's race to lose at that point. Of course, starting on pole, led the race up until that point, led every green flag lap that was. And he would win stage 1 there despite the sprint there. Of course, corner 1 is just going to be mayhem. There's no other word for it. People just lose their brain cells going into that corner, and then everything else just happens naturally after that. But Logano, Hamlin, Keselowski, Kurt Busch had a very, very good run there in the 1 car. We'll talk about his day a little bit later on. Kyle Larson up there as well. Martin Truex Jr. was recovering from a poor starting position a little bit in the mid-pack part, so he had worked his way up into the top 10 to earn some stage points. Austin Dillon as well, earning some stage points. Kevin Harvick and Chris Buescher, a guy that you had in your fantasy lineup, gets 1 stage point there to end stage 1. And there was also a moment here in stage 2, Kyle, with Ross Chastain. An interesting one to say the least. There's no real clear replay of what happened, but it appears to show that Ryan Blaney had just had enough of the 42 car and punted him, and Chastain ended up in the outside wall, ending his day. That's basically all that was said and wrote there. But just an interesting case there. I don't know if you have anything on to comment on it. It
kind of looked like he was trying to cross him over and maybe wasn't clear, something like that, and ended up catching a piece of him because it wasn't like a clear punt or anything like that, but it was strange there, and unfortunate for Chastain as well, who was having a pretty decent day, had a nice starting position, was staying out there in kind of the top 15 conversation, which would have been a nice solid points day for that team. But instead they get punted into the outside wall with that nice looking McDonald's scheme, and what was trending towards a pretty solid day with a chance to maybe steal away a top 10 or something like that early on in the season. Ends up with a 39th place finish there. So unfortunate turn of events there for Chastain.
Do you like that McDonald's scheme better than last year's, or
I don't get there's just some weird parts of, a McDonald's scheme is always going to look pretty solid, but there's some weird stuff going on with the weird M that's way down low on the contingency panel, and then you got the unfinished arches at the rear quarter panel as well. There's some weird stuff going on, but yeah, it's just kind of strange there. But hey, as long as you're looking at it on the hood or anything like that, it's always going to be gorgeous. That's true.
I do prefer last year's, I have to say, compared to this one. But nonetheless, we'll stop talking about McDonald's or else we're going to get hungry. But another incident that happened, Kurt Busch, a phenomenal day for that one car, points-wise, and he ended up getting the result here, despite this incident here where he was the leader in stage 2. And I don't know what happened to Kurt Busch. He just kind of flubbed it. He messed up. Coming out of turn 4 on the exit curb, he got loose on it and ends up going
easy to do.
A nice lawnmower ride through the infield grass and did a little bit of trimming, to say the least. And I don't know how, but he got extremely lucky that splitter is on that car. You would think grass splitter equals no good, but this time it was we'll let you have it, Kurt Busch. When you look at what happened to his brother on the first lap, he gets into it with the right sides and boom, and the entire right front blows up. It is phenomenal. I'm thinking,
varying degrees of success there, in the Xfinity race. He and was down
Gibbs.
there.
What happened there?
It's just rolling the dice and hoping for the best. It's kind of crazy.
It's whether you have the luck of the grass is on your side or not for the race. And sure enough, for Kurt Busch, the luck was on his side, for this incident here. And he would fall way back in the pack, about to 20th, 25th place there. Had a lot of grass on the grill that he had to try and clean off. But so he recovered just based off of strategy and as well as having a really fast car. Kurt Busch was phenomenal. Maybe he could be the new Clint Boyer when it comes to fantasy points this season. We'll keep an eye on that. But the end of stage 2, Denny Hamlin wins this one. Was right up there in the mix for up until this point in time. I'd say after this point in the race, Hamlin's car definitely started to slide back a little bit. You wonder if he maybe used up his brakes a little bit, but nonetheless, Kurt Busch won second place here in this stage. I must have mistimed my Kurt Busch kind of highlight there. But Joey Logano, Christopher Bell, Martin Truex Jr., Chase Elliott, William Byron, Cole Custer, AJ Allmendinger had a really good run up until that point, and Kyle Busch earned a stage point there for stage 2. So a lot of different varying strategies here at the end of that one as well. Allmendinger was out there on old tires. He kind of slid back. He tried his best to earn some stage points. Byron got up in the mix there as well. We hadn't really heard from him that much at that point in time. Custer had a very impressive run with those fresh tires at the end. Elliot had a slow pit stop prior to that, so that's why he was a little bit further back in the pack in that one. But yeah,
plus
Christopher
some of the
Bell
people
up
that
there
stayed out as well. So
yeah, it was just a mix of strategy once again, kind of an ill-timed caution there prior to the end of stage 2. And, that's when you got to set your fantasy lineup. So, I took a swing and I missed really bad.
It was looking good for a little while. I'll say that. Okay. No, I want to pump the brakes here because you did make a nice little call there for at least a little while. And that was, so we both had Chase Briscoe in the mix here. And for myself, I garaged him and I put in
it was
Chris
terrible
Buescher
at that point in time. He had
Eric
issues.
Jones. Yeah, he had a bunch of issues, but there was still like half the race to go, and his car was relatively okay, and he was in like the 20th to 25th range at that point. So I garaged him. I tossed in Eric Jones and Chris Buescher with the one stage point. Eric Jones for most of the day had been close, but still ahead of Briscoe at that point. You, on the other hand, you went a little bit risky and it almost paid off.
I know. I just didn't have that third guy I could look at to garage. Allmendinger at that point in time was in the top 10. Of course, I'm not going to garage him, right? And then Byron, I'm trying to match you on him. I didn't know what to do with Byron at that point. He was kind of lackluster for me the entire day, and the result was just terrible when it came down to it for Byron. And then, of course, Truex and Elliot were up there. So I was just like, if he's going to bench garage Briscoe, maybe there's an opportunity here for me to try and play him here and maybe get a steal of some points. And I didn't want to take the risk on Mcdowell just letting me down here in the final stage with the Daytona 500 hype.
At that point, Mcdowell was only like 3 positions up on Briscoe, and Briscoe, you would assume Stewart Haas and his ability as well would be able to push up through the field. And for a lot of that third stage, you were ahead by multiple points as well, but it all comes tumbling down.
Yeah, it in a massive way. Thanks for that, Kyle.
No problem.
Just say it's been a rough start to the fantasy season for your defending champion, to say the least.
Okay, to be fair, you've lost both matchups by 3 points.
Yeah, that's what's tough about it. It's not like I'm losing by landslides. It's like, all right, I'll give you that one. You outbeat me. But this time it's an error based off of my own judgment here that putting McDowell in the garage and putting Briscoe in it. Like taking McDowell out of putting McDowell in the garage and taking Briscoe out of it. Like I switched it about 5 different times before the end of stage 2 there. I'm like, oh, I don't know what I should do. And then I just ended up going with Briscoe on the in playing him, McDowell in the garage, and it ended up biting me in the butt. But an interesting point up until then was stage 2, Kyle. It was kind of back and forth. Chase Elliott seemed like he was running the show, but this kind of lack of track position there to end stage 2 kind of shook things up and gave some other drivers a chance to shine.
Yeah, it was an interesting stage 2 there, and obviously Elliot out front and Truex trying to run him down. But in terms of the stage finish, at least, some big stage points there for Kurt Busch. That was huge. He was exceeding expectations, I think, up there, and always kind of a sneaky guy on road courses. But even so, I think outperforming expectations there. Denny Hamlin, always the one to kind of scoop up when other people make mistakes and grabbing the stage win, and he had a massive points day. Exactly. But yeah, when you look further down there, Byron was a lot quieter than I expected him to be throughout much of this race up until this point. Picking up the 7th place finish in the stage was nice, but I was expecting them to maybe get up there a little bit more. Obviously unfortunate for some of those teams that were maybe banking on none of those kind of late stage cautions, which kind of screwed over a lot of the typical strategy we see where people have to decide between stage points or the track position of pitting and stuff like that before stage breaks. We didn't get to see that in this one, so we didn't get to see anybody like Byron or Custer or anybody like that maybe steal a few extra points, which played into some of our thought process when making some picks in fantasy, which was interesting to see because it's been a while since we saw that on a road course. But I think one of the big things there I'm looking at is Cole Custer being up there as one of the leading kind of forwards throughout much of this race, and fringe top 10 much of the day. Logano was up there. Keselowski was either up there or at the back, depending on what the hell he was doing. But with Briscoe's issues as well, much of the day it was kind of Kevin Harvick / Cole Custer as that second forward, and I was not anticipating that at all. And obviously Harvick is underperforms relative to expectation at road courses, but Cole Custer being a strong suit, very, very impressive from him there.
Yeah, I was like, we texted during the race. I was very impressed with Cole Custer. I was shocked when I saw him in the top 10 because I didn't think he would get anywhere close to that when we look at the competition he's against. When you have the likes of Allmendinger, and Briscoe in that same organization now, going to be up there trying to battle with him throughout the race and get some bragging rights. But Custer drove a solid race, was smooth throughout, didn't do anything to jeopardize any chance of getting any stage points there and getting a solid finish at the end of it. Finishing inside the top 15 there was Cole Custer. So really solid day for that 00 car and 41 car, excuse me.
Throwing it back to the Xfinity days.
I'm looking at the Xfinity notes and I'm like, oh boy, I can't wait to get to that. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. But yeah, let's jump into the race turning point here, essentially. But before that, Allmendinger had a speeding penalty at the end of stage 2 there, which really screwed my stuff up. And then he got put to the back. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, don't do this to me where he gets caught up in something. But he did recover, thank God. But it didn't really end up mattering anyways because I lose fantasy once again this week. But the race turning point, Kyle, about 15 or so laps, it was green there at the end of stage 2 there into the final stage of the race. And it seemed like it was all traditionally going to plan. This is when I texted you, oh, man, I hope it's not going to get all boring and predictable because Chase Elliott was out front, Christopher Bell there in second, Martin Truex Jr. in third, and it just seemed like they were running, solid lap times, nothing really gaining on one another. And then rain struck out of nowhere. It was very, very weird timing and kind of worked out in terms of the entertainment value for what NASCAR is hoping for. I think that probably had a little bit of a factor in why they threw the caution here, because it was when they went to commercial break, we saw the camera kind of zoom in on a tree and the rain and the wind, and it was just like, oh, can we get something here? But it just seemed relatively dry on the track. It didn't seem too damp. It kind of hit the turns in Daytona in the high banks of turn 2, and they said it was getting a little bit damp there. So they threw the caution with about 20 laps to go at that point in time. And it threw the entire race up in the air because at that point in time, guys had just pitted for their last set of pit stops for the entire race with green flag pit stops about 3 laps prior to when the caution flew. So they're on relatively fresh tires for the leaders and basically everybody in the field. So it just kind of left the strategy up in the air. There was no way anybody was going to be pitting for wet tires because by the time they got back around to the front straightaway to pick up the pace car, it was already stopping to rain. So we can talk about this a little bit, Kyle.
Yeah.
With the issue of the rain and how it all unfolded here, because a lot of people on Twitter are like, let's just get rid of the rule where it has to be a mandatory caution for the dampness and just trying to make things as fair as possible, give the teams an automatic chance here to either put the rain tires on. It's up to their discretion if they want to, or if they want to stay out on the dries and try and tough it out if it does continue to rain or if it doesn't. So what are your thoughts on it? I know we're probably in agreement on what we would like to see, but just for a bit of context here, what are you thinking here? Could be a future rule that should be implemented here regarding to the rain cautions.
Yeah, it was a circumstance where NASCAR was throwing it because there's a technicality in a rule where they can do it, and they did it because they wanted to manufacture an exciting finish, and they got it. They got a lot of wrecked race cars because of it. But I think the big thing is we need to rewrite rules regarding road courses if we're going to have this many on the schedule. This isn't days of years past where you had one truck of rain tires and everybody basically had one opportunity to throw them on, and like it was in those kind of original Montreal rain days. We've got 7 road courses. We've got rain tires. Like, this is not something where we need to throw a caution, for crying out loud. Like,
we already have the stages.
Yeah, this is a situation where for every other motorsport that races in rain on road, it's an element of strategy, and it should be, because we saw it at the Roval last year where it kind of played out better because you started on the rain tires and it was a transition to the dry versus this circumstance where it was in theory dry transitioning to wet, where last year at the Roval, you had everybody starting on the wet, and then you didn't have a caution to go back to the dries. It was everybody does so at their discretion. And because of that, we saw some different drivers up at the front because of different strategy calls. With this, it was something where nobody was going to pit for wet tires because of the circumstances of it. It was a quick, relatively light shower in certain parts of the track where it wouldn't have made sense to go down and take wet tires if you didn't have to, because they would have dried out and your tires would have been spent in a couple laps anyways. So we need to get rid of that rule in general, because we don't need a caution on road courses for wet weather when you have the ability to go and pit. It should be up to the discretion of the teams. It should be up to the discretion of the drivers. And we kind of saw a manufactured finish at the end of this one. And I think we would have got a really strong battle between Chase Elliott and Christopher Bell at the end. He was within a second of him for much of that final stage, even gapping third place by like 5-6 seconds by the time that caution went. And instead, we get the chaotic kind of finish that NASCAR prefers in this case. And it's just something where it's okay to have races where somebody wins by a decent margin, or it's okay to have a race where somebody, where two people are up front by a decent margin and they battle it out, or see if they can get there to battle it out. It's just something where it leaves a bit of a bad taste in your mouth in terms of how it happened, because instead of having a nice battle between Elliott and seeing if Bell can go and chase him down and all this kind of stuff, we get kind of this caution for no reason, essentially. They had an opportunity to throw it. They threw it so that they could get the excitement factor. Everybody goes down and not a single person takes wet weather tires, which is why the caution was thrown in the first place. And we get the chaotic kind of first turn, everything after a restart late at the Daytona road course, which we saw multiple times over the weekend in more normal circumstances, I guess. And in this one, it just kind of felt more manufactured and just kind of robbed away what was leading up to be a very solid road course race and a very solid road course finish, and just kind of made it this chaotic kind of mess instead.
Yeah, like you said, it's perfect word, mess. It was just messy at the end of things, how it ended up.
Yeah.
And for a lot of those guys that had solid runs up until that point, if it stays green, their race got absolutely screwed over by that caution just based off of being put back in the pack if you wanted to pit there. And that's what a lot of people did. The leaders did pit there to get fresh, slick tires. They didn't even go on the wets. They pitted for fresh, slick tires if he still had some sets remaining. While some guys, because they, like I said earlier, had just pitted for green flag pit stops, opted to stay out there and try and get some valuable track position, because at that point in time, you have to expect for that 15 lap long run there, and that's a long time on a road course of this length, that they're going to get a bit antsy come the end of this thing, because this is the time where they can actually make up spots and the field is all bunched up. They're not spread out and they're not under green flag conditions. So going into turn one, you have to expect some chaos, because people are just going to overshoot it or try and compensate or overcompensate for a position that they could probably get a little bit later on. But, you know, some of these drivers are a little bit dumber than others, or something just happens where they're just out of control and it's the car's fault and they had nothing to do with it. So I don't know. It's just all over the place there with that caution. I agree entirely that it should be an element of strategy. That's the most important thing. And when we have the stage breaks, we don't need another manufactured caution or a specific caution for something like this. We have those for the stage breaks. Fine. Have your cautions for the stage breaks, but at least let the rest play itself out from then on out. You can control it to that point of degree for the race. You can have your cautions for the stages at certain points and times, and your competition cautions, of course. But besides that, let them race, let them decide it out. It could totally change up the race, and that's on the teams themselves to figure it out. They don't have as much strategy to deal with as we see in maybe Formula One or IndyCar in terms of how you want to change your sets or what kind of tire compound you want to start on and stuff. This would be that element of strategy that NASCAR is looking for, and that the fact that we got denied of that for a light shower that barely got the track damp enough to even be remotely considered wet is frustrating for sure. But like you said, they want that entertainment value. They want people to be tuning in to expect that late race caution that we typically see on most occasions in these races. So frustrating in that sense. And, for a lot of the cautions itself, you wish you had local yellows for road courses as well, so we don't have to go stopping and starting so much. You can, with that big of a track, there should be an opportunity there for marshals to go pick up a slight bit of debris or something like that without putting themselves in harm's way. And of course, there's exceptions to that. You've got to stop the field when you feel like it's necessary, but at a certain point in time, I think more so in the Xfinity and Truck Series race that we saw over the weekend, less the Cup Series, we could have used that local yellow rule that we see in most cases, specifically Formula One with their sectors. And if you want to go under safety car, sure, but then let's just have the sector yellows where everybody has to slow down, you can't pass or anything like that. It just makes sense to keep the flow of the race going. So on that long tangent there, cautions suck. It's frustrating for a lot of these guys because, like I said, the leaders did come down in pit and they lose that valuable track position that they had worked so hard to earn at that point in time, showing that they had the speed and talent up front to get themselves in a position to fight for the victory. And that was kind of taken away for a lot of the heavy hitters. Chase Elliott, Christopher Bell, Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Busch, they all pit with the likes of Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, Kurt Busch, and a couple others staying out to gain that valuable track position that really resulted in them getting the finish. That's why we're calling this the turning point in the race, because a lot of those guys that were out front prior to that caution did not finish there except for one in Christopher Bell. That was basically the only exception that finished well within the top five of who pitted there on that rain, quote unquote, caution. So frustrating, very frustrating to say the least there. But you have anything else you want to add on that topic?
Yeah, just finally on it, it was NASCAR taking advantage of a rule that was written under very different circumstances. It was a rule that was put into place in the first kind of wet weather tests that they were going to do back in, what was it, like 07, 08 when they had the first wet weather race in Montreal. So it was a very different circumstance. They didn't have the multitude of accessibility to wet weather tires like they do now. They didn't have as many road courses on the schedule. So when I'm looking at how different NASCAR is in terms of the road course racing in 2021 versus like 07 or 08, whenever that first wet weather race was, we need to adjust the rules accordingly. And I think this kind of clearly showed that this was kind of NASCAR taking advantage of a situation here. I think that there's been a decent amount of backlash over the call to waive the yellow there, especially given nobody took wet weather tires. And we'll see where it goes from here. I hope that they make that change, especially given how many more opportunities there are for that to potentially happen this year, given we still got, 6 more road course races to go. So, just unfortunate to see, because we had a nice finish upcoming, but instead we get kind of this messy, sloppy final handful of laps with multiple restarts there when it wasn't necessary. If there was a genuine caution that comes out, then of course. But at the end of the day, of the top 10 fastest cars on track on Sunday, only 5 of them finished in the top 10, and much of those guys were inside the top 10 before the shenanigans at the end. It wasn't like much of those. It wasn't like the other 5 of the top 10 that didn't finish there had any kind of issues before the late caution and kind of all the mess that came afterwards. So it was just, again, the word is manufactured. The word is frustrated. It's those kind of things because we didn't have to have this kind of messy finish like we had in the Truck Series or anything like that. The Truck Series one, you can say whatever you want about it, but there were some legitimate cautions there at the end. This one was just kind of throwing one for the sake of throwing one so we could get kind of that chaotic finish.
Yeah, if it wasn't so green for so long there prior to that, they probably wouldn't have thrown the yellow.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
exactly. So
because we had a lot of chaos before that in the first 2 stages with a lot of cautions and a lot of tight racing there at the front. But it is nice to let the race play out once in a while. And I think that's what the stages in particular have kind of taken away from the racing, that natural progression through the races. Not to say the stage racing has its moments of greatness, but there have been some flaws where it takes away that moment of momentum for the race, and it sets up strategic moments for some guys that were deserving of stage points don't get them. And that's kind of what the intention of a stage was in the first place, was to reward guys who are running up front to get those stage points, because they may not be there at the finish. But if they're there prior to the stages and they can't get those stage points just based off of a fluke yellow or something like that, then there's an issue with having those cautions. But nonetheless, it's an important discussion to have, because it is a major talking point in this one, and it's really what dictated how a lot of drivers ended up finishing.
Dictated the finish.
This one. Yeah. And for Chase Elliott, he had the dominant car up until this point, was obviously challenged by Christopher Bell that previous run, but on the ensuing restart here after the rain caution, he pulled off an incredible save after getting shoved wide a little bit coming out of turn 3, or whatever turn it is coming out of the International Horseshoe there. He gets shoved out wide.
Yeah, I think that's 3. Yeah.
I just don't know what they want to call if they call those corners or not. But nonetheless, Chase Elliott gets pushed wide by Corey LaJoie. And what an incredible save by Chase Elliott, first off.
Can wheel a race car. Oh, my goodness.
That was incredible. Lots of grass to fill up the nose of that thing. But thankfully for him, a caution for Tyler Reddick would allow him to get that nose cleaned off and go for another run at it on the next restart there. But really credit to Chase Elliott for trying to save his race there at that point in time. It would not come to fruition later on due to something out of his control once again here, but he was definitely in control at that point in time when he made that save in the grass.
Yeah, that was insane. Most people in the field there are wrecking back across and taking out a lot of cars, but the fact that he was able to essentially maintain speed to a certain extent running through the grass there, and not wreck a bunch of people in the process was insane. I thought as soon as I saw him go off, I was expecting him to come back across the track and wipe out a bunch of people, but a masterclass of driving there to at least salvage some kind of result there for a little bit. Obviously didn't end up coming, but the fact that he was able to save that meant that he had another shot at things when inevitably we got another caution, and then the chaos that ensued after that one, of course. But it just goes to show that, especially at a road course like this one, where you get cautions late, there's going to be chaos. There's going to be there's always going to be somebody spinning off into turn 1. It's just whether it's one person at the back or a ton of people near the middle and near the front that is going to result in a caution. And we saw multiple times over the weekend it did result in cautions, and it's just one of those things again where without that yellow for the rain, you have a much more, obviously there could have just been a caution after that anyways, and we get the same kind of thing. But we were on course for a very good finish. And instead we get the chaos and everything like that instead. So a massive class of driving there from Elliot though. I was like, oh my God, that's insane. Some nice ad time as well for the advertisers there who had the signage out there, as well. Reddick as well with the fire. That was nuts. But as soon as that yellow came out and we saw people go down pit road and all that kind of stuff, we knew that was going to happen on the first restart. It was just a matter of who.
Yeah, exactly. It reminded me a lot of this guy right here in the first Cars movie. It reminded me a lot of that. I have to give Lightning McQueen his credit. I'll give him a shout out here. But that caution for Reddick once again would bunch the field up, and then one of the other heavy hitters in this one, Martin Truex Jr., sent it into turn 1 on the ensuing restart, made up a couple spots prior to that pass caution, and like we've seen in the past with Martin Truex Jr. on these road courses where he has a very, very good car, he overcompensates. He goes that little bit too far, and that ended up biting him in the butt once again here. And he kind of got a little bit offline coming into 1, was a little bit lower, and just kind of got into the dirty stuff, and he wheel hopped it coming in there. He ended up spinning that 19 car around, and he would actually get into his teammate there, an eventual race winner, Christopher Bell. But luckily for Bell, he was able to continue on. That car was made out of something pretty good because it was a pretty hefty lick and hit. I was close to saying either or, but I meant up. It's
not an out to toast, definitely.
No, it's not an out to toast, but. And nonetheless, Bell was able to survive, but unfortunately for Truex, his luck would kind of run out there. He would just salvage a day there. And I believe he ends up, where do I have him 12th. Here? 12th. So he ends up getting something out of it here, just based off of another caution. So not too bad at the end of the day for Martin Truex Jr., but he was all the way back to, I think it was 25th at this point in time after that spin. So not a great finish of what could have been for Truex, because I'm sure he would have been right up there in the top 3.
How many times have we said that at road courses where recently, though, right? Like
Yeah.
for Truex, it seems
Either
like a lot of the time,
or team or both.
yeah, there's always something that goes wrong. It seems for Truex during one of these road course races recently, and as you mentioned, whether it's a team strategy thing or whether it's a Truex mistake himself, it feels like they're just trying to do too much to try and catch up to Chase Elliott or anybody, because in this case it wasn't them trying to catch up to Chase Elliott. And yeah, it just seems like, again, it goes back to what Christopher Bell did. He had the car, he had the ability, and he didn't overstep those boundaries, and he got into a situation where he was the favorite to win, and he went out and completed that. Whereas Truex, who was in a very similar situation on that restart, tries to do too much into turn one, ends up spinning out and costing his chance at getting a top 10, let alone a shot at the win. So I think that again shows to how strong of a performance Christopher Bell put up, because his teammate in the exact same situation he was in a very comparable car made a mistake going into turn one. And we saw a lot of mistakes from a lot of different people. Just you're waiting for Truex to break back through at a road course. And at this point, it seems like it might not happen. It seems like it might be just something where he's cursed or something like that. But
the road course, you look to the Clash, former short tracks.
You look back to last year at the Daytona road course. Like he's been great in terms of like single lap and multiple laps, but it just seems like he just can't get the finish here.
It's the final third that's really costing Truex. You can get those stage points. He's up there when the race is a little bit more tame. But at the end of it, something just
regular
happens.
Season race at this place, it was
he had a speeding penalty. I think it was
at the end of stage 2, right when he pit. So yeah, pit from the lead, I think it was as well.
Yes,
came down speeding.
I had him to win stage 2 for fantasy.
That's right.
And I was so pissed. I was so mad that he ended up coming down pit road for to lose out on points, and then didn't end up getting the win at the end of it. So frustrating there.
But yeah, that just goes to show, like it's been a run here where he's been so good at this track, but then they've made the mistakes and haven't got the finishes they've deserved. Even back to last year at the road course, here he finished third, but he should have probably won the race instead. The Busch Clash, they were arguably the strongest team out there, and they go out and crash from it and have mistakes multiple times. And then here, if they get through that turn one cleanly, he's ahead of Christopher Bell there, and Christopher Bell won the race on equal tires and arguably an equal car, if not worse, as well. So instead goes and spins and recovers for a 12th place finish, which is a nice recovery, but could have been a whole lot more for Truex on this day.
Yeah, he's going to be left leaving Daytona what could have been, and We'll see how many times he can keep on doing this season if he does. He's going to have a lot more
opportunities to prevail on a road course this year at least. But yeah, this is definitely an opportunity gone to waste here.
Yeah, and on this the next caution there to kind of save Truex there, he would pit to prepare for damage. It would be Corey LaJoie getting, it seems, some payback there from Chase Elliott. And I
don't think we saw that at all, did we?
We never saw a replay from what I saw, but unless I blinked and I missed it, I don't think we saw anything with that. But LaJoie's car was pretty destroyed, to say the least, to bring out a caution. So that strategy call with him staying out there after the rain caution ends up just kind of ending him in a worse position there than what it probably would have been if he pitted there and just kind of salvaged what he was running in. But disappointing there for LaJoie. Elliot was taking no prisoners, to say the least, at that point in time. He felt like he was losing an opportunity to win this race as more and more caution laps kind of wound down. I will give credit to NASCAR in that regard there. They didn't take too long to clean up stuff there at the end of the race. It was about 2 laps per caution, so we had about 10, then got to 8. So it wasn't too bad in terms of losing laps, but nonetheless, it would have all been prevented if they didn't throw the rain caution in the first place. So it is kind of whatever's glass half full, glass half empty, however you want to look at it at the end of things. But on this next restart there, Kyle Larson would have an issue after having a solid top 10 car the entire day. I was really impressed with Larson. We looked at him for fantasy as a notable mention from this past week.
Yeah, and he's a guy that didn't have any laps here either in his stock car either. He wasn't in the Clash. No. Obviously, he wasn't in this race last year, and he was always in the top 10. And if not for that mistake there, he might have gone out and won the thing.
He could have. He was ahead of Bell at that point in time as well. So, and he's on the same strategy. So unfortunate there for Larson. He would just get loose into turn 6 there and hitting the tire barriers, ending his
Very
day.
easy to do.
Yeah, I'm surprised we didn't see it more the entire weekend. It was kind of only a couple of guys that I can think
There
of
was a
that had
bunch of people
issues.
that got wide, but nobody that completely blew it there.
Yeah, that was a really big passing opportunity too with the cutback move, going out wide
Yeah.
and then trying to park it on the apex. Christopher Bell experienced that firsthand with Kurt Busch, where Busch just parked it right on the apex and it totally destroyed the right front of that Bell's car. I'm like, oh no, tire
me
up.
too.
He's
I
done.
thought,
He's done. It's over. Bell's done. I can't believe it. Logano's gonna win it, and somehow it clearanced itself. So thankfully for the race itself, Bell did not cut down a tire. I honestly don't know how it happened. Luck was on his side in a lot of senses for Bell, avoiding major incident with
good to
Martin
get lucky.
Yeah. And Christopher Bell was certainly that on Sunday. Kyle Busch had his day that he had an up and down day from start to finish, end up really down at the end of it. Really unfortunate there for Kyle Busch.
What the hell happened there even? Like
I don't know. It was just a weird exchange out of the final chicane, and he ended up 3 wide, and I think something broke or something like that because he just kept on turning left and just kept on jerking the car into, I believe it was Austin Dillon or Chris Buescher. It was one of those two. And just unfortunate there for Kyle Busch. His car would be destroyed at that point in time. He would finish 35th in this one after recovering to a top 5 position on pure speed. Showed that car was actually pretty capable in this one. It was very if it wasn't damaged early on, you wonder what could have been as well for Kyle Busch in this one if he could have been that leading Gibbs car, but he leaves once again disappointed here at the Daytona road course. Just cannot get the finishes lately on these road courses, it seems. Despite the Busch Clash victory, it's been very poor for Kyle Busch on these types of road courses. Maybe not so the Watkins Glens and Sonomas that we've traditionally seen him on, but the Charlotte Roval and the Daytona road course have really bitten Busch in the butt. That's a nice bit of what is the word for poetry there with the double B's
alliteration.
and alliteration. There it is. That's old elementary school stuff right there. But and then no caution will be called for either of these incidents there with Larson or Kyle Busch. And then Chase Elliott, as a result of that, with no caution, he would try his best to get past Brad Keselowski, but that 2 car was being stubborn like he was basically all day. It was probably the hardest thing to pass was Brad Keselowski, it seemed like, the entire day, because he kept on locking up the front tires and he kept on going straight into the corners, and there's a guy to his outside and they're like, well, what do you want me to do? I can't do anything. So unfortunate there for Brad Keselowski on that sense throughout the entire day, but mainly Chase Elliott here as he would get punted from behind by Denny Hamlin. Nothing really the 11 car could do because the 2 car parked it on the apex, and the 9 car just tried to pull across a switchback move on him. It just kind of got parked on the apex and would get spun around, ending his chances of a day and a victory at that as well. So unfortunate there for Chase Elliott, a guy that we have on our fantasy lineup. Is going to be kind of a wasted usage at the end of the day here with him not getting the 2 stage wins or getting that race victory that we all kind of expected going into the day. So we'll have to maybe rethink our Chase Elliott usages on road courses, because if this race was just in the respects of it's not such a sure thing as maybe what I looked at it for sure coming into this one. But you can't blame the man for trying. He tried his damnedest to try and get back up there, but just ran out of time. And if it wasn't for that caution, we could maybe have seen that 9 car in victory lane once again on a road course, but it was not to be on that occasion. And then this is where my fantasy lineup just really went right downhill. Chase Briscoe's hood flopped up right in front of the windshield. I don't know how he drove an entire lap with like that, but he managed to salvage something out of it and then came down pit road to fix it. So he was in the top 10 at that point in time. I was looking pretty. Kyle texts me, "Oh, you've got fantasy in the bag at this point." And I'm like,
"Yep." And then like the next camera shot is the boom, hood comes up. So
I was the mixed emotions in this one was just absolutely insane. But that's where it all went downhill. If I kept Briscoe, if he had just kept this position, I would have won fantasy, but was not to be on this one. Kyle gets the advantage on me, 2-0 in the head-to-head this season, and only 6 points overall. brutal start to the season here.
What's nuts is that we had more points in the 500 than we did the road course.
That is pretty nuts. Oh, God. And I had 3 guys in a wreck on lap 14 in that one. Like, what the heck happened in this one? William Byron had an issue there at the end, too. He was just parked in the final 2 laps there. I just saw him at the exit of turn 6.
Did they ever say what happened to him either? Or?
I never saw anything, but something happened in the 24 car where he was just limping home on that final lap. And he was another guy that we had in our lineups. I really wish I
would have been a top 15
him.
at least, no? Like he would have been.
Maybe.
I don't remember where he was running, but
He was kind of all over the place. I couldn't keep track of where Byron was. Sometimes he would be back in the late 20s, sometimes in the top 10. Like I don't know what the heck was up with that 24 car on Sunday, but that was kind of the final lap run down there. It was just kind of chaos.
Yeah, that was on the last lap, right?
Yeah, and unfortunately there for William Byron, he would not have a good day at the end of it here when we expected him to have a solid one. And then, of course, the finish, which we already alluded to earlier on in the show. So very entertaining race, chaotic race. I mean, so many levels of disappointment and enthusiasm. It's just so many different ways you can look at this race. But congratulations to Christopher Bell on getting his first career victory in the Cup Series. And just seems like that duo of Adam Stevens and Christopher Bell is honestly going to be something that's going to be one to keep your eye out this entire season, man. I said it when they had made that announcement. The real winner here is Christopher Bell and Adam Stevens, because you're getting the top-tier crew chief here, man. And clearly he has the piece underneath him here. And if Stevens has kind of figured out with that lack of practice what he needed to do over the offseason, that's very scary with Christopher Bell's talent. It's going to be a very interesting to see how the 20 car plays their strategy from here on out, because they can go for playoff points now. They don't have to worry about points racing per se. And
Exactly.
I'm really looking forward to watching that 20 car. If we can have a 4-horse stable over there at Joe Gibbs Racing, I love Eric Jones, but if we can have 4 elite cars over there at JGR, watch out, because they could be coming at that record that they set themselves back in 2019 with the most wins. Because if they have 4 cars like that, that's going to be tough to beat. But yeah. Any more thoughts on the race itself before we look at the notable finishers and get into Cush's threes for the first time in 2021?
Yes. The ending was messy, but I think the race itself prior to that was very strong. We got some good racing on the Daytona road course. It was better than last year specifically. And even though the ending was kind of convoluted in that regard, it was still a pretty good finish. If you ignore the kind of the mess, and once you get through to the kind of the green flag laps, Kyle Larson going for broke there and then ending up wrecking going into 6th there. Bell coming through with the fresher tires and having to chase down Logano and get by Kurt Busch and all that kind of stuff. It was still a good last couple of laps. It was just manufactured at the end, and it kind of leaves that kind of sour taste in your mouth. And it was leading up to be a good race. It doesn't have to be spectacular every single time. And just they tried to make it spectacular in that regard, and just kind of unfortunate that way. But at the end of the day, a nice little road course race. Unusual to have it this early, but I think overall it was still a net positive here early on in the season.
For sure. I'm pretty overall on the good side of things from this race.
Yeah.
I can't really look at it in a bad light. Of course, there's some things, if you want to be really nitpicky, that there were some issues. And but at the end of the day, we got another first-time winner, which is always great to see. And I'm ecstatic for Christopher Bell here that he's that this move to JGR, the risk that they're taking, getting rid of a guy that they've kind of nurtured in Eric Jones has paid off here, at least in the short term. We'll see how he progresses from the season. But all signs were there in his uptick throughout the entire 3 flights of the National Series in NASCAR, that Christopher Bell was going to be something special, and he's already proven it here in his second race with the big powerhouse at JGR. So let's look at the notable finishers from the Cup Series race at the Daytona road course. Top 2 go self-explanatory, Logano and Christopher Bell. They both ran really solid races. Logano had a very impressive points day, getting 52 points out of it, which is actually higher than the race winner there, tied for most of the race as well there with Denny Hamlin in 3rd. So very solid run from all 3 of those guys. Powerhouses, the guys that you kind of expect to have good runs, maybe not to that degree of success. 52 points at a road course when the max is 60 is very, very impressive, and they'll take that all of that to the bank all day long. Hamlin off to a very, very strong start to his 2021 campaign after sweeping the stages in the Daytona 500, getting another one here and getting another solid top 5 finish to start off his season. Kurt Busch in 4th. What an up and down day he had, but he ends up proving that speed in the 1 car was legit, and he gets a top 5 finish deservingly so. Despite his issues, he was a top 5 car all day long. And Brad Keselowski rounds up the top 5 there. I don't know how he did it, like I said earlier, but he ended up holding off the field there. The hard chargers on fresher tires than him at the end as well. Gets a top 5 finish. I felt like he was off the track more than he was on, but nonetheless, the 2-car ends up getting a top 5 finish, and that's just perseverance by that 2 team the entire day, never giving up, and that's one thing you can say about Brad Keselowski. Kevin Harvick in 6th. Very surprising run, in my opinion, from Kevin Harvick. Just kept his nose clean all day, was not really mentioned on the broadcast.
Solid.
Yep, top 10, kind of at the back half of the top 10, would fall out maybe here or there depending on some strategy calls. But nonetheless, top 10 run. Kevin Harvick at a road course, and he goes to Homestead, Miami, where he's very good as well. I mean, why not? Just take it all day long here for Kevin Harvick. So a lot of the guys that ran well in the Daytona 500 here were up in the mix once again here. Maybe not Christopher Bell and Kurt Busch, but Hamlin, Logano, Keselowski, and Harvick all had good runs in the 500, and they all end up getting really solid runs here at the Daytona road course as well. AJ Allmendinger there in 7th. Really impressive showing from colleague, showing that speed was legit this weekend. And, I mean, you sign up AJ for any road course that he can get to this season. If you're colleague, you put him in every single race just to get that car prep for next season, because if he can get results like that out of it, that's very impressive when it's kind of a one-off entry for this team. And when they're competing against the likes of Stewart-Haas Racing, Penske, they had some serious speed. They were kind of a little bit off in some of the strategy calls, I felt like, for this one. I don't know about you, Kyle, here on Allmendinger, but it just felt like that staying out to end stage 2 there to try and get some points was maybe their downfall. And I think they probably should have pitted there, but I don't know if you have any.
Yeah, it was a bit weird. Like, you could understand why they would stay out there, and it's something that I hadn't thought about previously. It's the fact that they're an open entry and they don't have like the locked in status or anything like that. So if there's any races that they want to enter or anything like that, having those banked up points would be big for them in terms of the owner standings in 2021. But didn't end up paying off. It would have been better in the long run. Of course, it didn't really matter because on their next pit stop they sped anyway. So if they speed earlier, then it doesn't change much. But overall though, I think very, very strong showing from them in general. We didn't really know what to expect from them going in, but they were top 10 in speed. They came from the back. They were very strong. Very impressive going forwards. I didn't know what to expect from them going into things, but they exceeded my expectations for sure. I thought that maybe they'd be in like the 10th to 15th range, just being a new team that's primary focus is Xfinity. They're just doing a handful of cup races this year, but they, in terms of raw pace and everything like that, they legitimately looked like they were on par with like an RCR team, which is very impressive to say for a team that was literally in their first ever Cup Series race outside of the Daytona 500.
Yeah, very true. He was in the top 5 at one point in time and had some really, really solid pace there. So hopefully AJ does come back for multiple road course races, because having that extra element of an open entry is very, very entertaining.
Yeah,
and we'll see if he can get into the mix there for the lead at one point in time. It just it hurts with that starting position that he's always going to have.
And you would have to imagine
they
build as the season goes along as well. So
hopefully. And then Michael Mcdowell, another guy who had my lineup, finishes with the top 10. Oh, God. But a very strong start to the season for Mcdowell, the Daytona 500 winner, and a top 10 run here at the Daytona
points.
road
How
course.
about that?
You never know. Top 20 in points. You know, the 34 car, if he can get these results on road courses and just kind of keep his nose clean, he didn't really have any issues despite that first lap incident. You wonder what he could have done on that opening stint there if he didn't have those issues, if he could have been up there in the mix with Elliot, staying in that top 5, just integrated in that top tier battle. But a top 10 run, just kind of minimizing mistakes from then on, it was very impressive from Mcdowell. So props to him. Should have stuck with my guns on it, but you live and you learn, I guess. Michael Mcdowell gets a second consecutive top 10 finish at the Daytona road course as well. So I should have never bet against him. But Ryan Preece there in ninth position as well. Very, very impressive from Ryan Preece. I said it, I think there is potential in this guy. I don't know, but top 10
you know
run.
what? I've always liked him on super speedways, obviously on the short tracks, because that's his bread and butter. He's always been a sneaky road course guy as well. The big thing for me is consistent performances on the mile and a half. They've got a very strong start to the season. Good momentum here. We can see if they can carry it on into the next little stretch here where we get into the quote unquote normal NASCAR tracks. But no, a very strong
my bread and
start
butter
for Ryan
with
Preece
fantasy.
here.
That's my bread and butter with
exactly,
fantasy.
exactly. That's where I'm getting nervous. So
I really need to make up some ground here.
Okay, you're only 6 points back, but
overall, though, we're going to be looking at the head-to-head. Like that's what
we're definitely looking at that,
right?
So I'm feeling good.
Even if I beat you overall, you're going to be like, I beat you head-to-head or something like that.
Well, by NASCAR rules, of course, as I mention every time I can, I won the last race last year, which I think means that I'm the champion. But
okay, we are never going to let that go for the entire 11 months that this season basically
nope,
is
because
on.
not only does it get you, it also gets the stupid NASCAR system. So
oh god, all right. Appreciate that, Kyle. But yeah, Ryan Preece, very solid showing there in the 37 car. Keep an eye out on Ryan Preece. If he can put those bad demons in 2020 behind him, we could see something with the top 25 in points, something like that for Ryan Preece this season. When you look at that midfield battle, that's going to be exceptional for that team. So hopefully he can continue this hot start that he's off to the season throughout the rest of the season. Alex Bowman gets a top 10. Very quiet day for the 48 car. Didn't really hear anything from him. Kind of had a couple of door bangs, I felt like, throughout the race. Wasn't the cleanest looking car at the end of things, but gets a top 10 run. Has been decent on the road courses in the past, more so the Charlotte Roval. But
yeah, that's been his place. But no, a solid little day, and again, just kind of salvaging points where you can. He was in that 10th to 15th range for much of the day, and goes out, keeps it clean on that last restart, and grabs the top 10.
Yep. Chris Buescher there in 11th, the guy that you had in your fantasy lineup, was very solid throughout the day, getting a stage point there, was kind of in the mix there throughout the entire race, really. Very impressive showing from Chris Buescher. I just felt like he was just kind of stuck in the 10th to 20th range. He didn't go higher. He didn't go lower. He was just kind of in that mix, which is what we kind of expect from Chris Buescher. We're not going to expect him to break the top 5 by any means, but I think for what that 17 car brings week in and week out, there's a lot to be positive about in that camp here after this weekend. Martin Truex Jr., as we alluded to earlier, finishing 12th, so salvaging the most out of what happened there despite the incident there in turn 1. So decent day, I guess, when you look at for Truex, but he's going to be looking at it as something that could have been a lot better at the end of this one. Cole Custer in 13th. This is one that was very impressive for me. Was in the top 10, got some stage points. Kind of fell back there just based off of the strategy there at the end of things, with some guys getting through restarts a little bit better than he did. But 13th place overall for Cole Custer on a road course where he typically doesn't shine is a very, very good positive for that team. Eric Jones in 14th, another guy you had in your fantasy lineup there, was up and down the entire day, had the early tire issue, was kind of in the back half of the teens, was in the early 20s for a lot of the race, but managed to find some positions there late on in this one, with some guys making mistakes. Larson, Elliot, those kind of guys, he just didn't have to do anything to get around those guys. They were just parked on the side of the road, and he just flew on by. But Eric Jones with a top 15 run. And then Daniel Suarez, 16th place here. Incredible run from him, because he threw up with 15 laps to go inside the car.
That's nuts.
And he kept going.
Oh, my God.
And let's not forget, people, he's wearing a helmet, and he's throwing up inside the car. No, I don't want to make you guys think about it, but I think man of the match, driver of the day, goes to Daniel Suarez based off of that. Wow, what an impressive showing from him.
Give him like a playoff point or something for that. Like, that's nuts.
I would. And the fact that he toughed it out there on those late restarts, having to sit in that under caution, massive credit to Daniel Suarez and to the Tire Trackhouse team, getting a 16th place run on their first shot at a road course with that new team. Very impressive showing from him. And they outdueled the 2311 car, which Bubba Wallace had a terrible day in this one, as we kind of expect on road courses, but not a great showing from 2311 in this one. Bubba just was kind of all over the place and had issues left, right, and center, it seemed. But yeah, credit to Daniel Suarez on that one. Ty Dillon, props to him, getting a top 20 run for the 96 car in 19th place. Wow, what a showing from him. And I just really hope he gets some more consistent rides this season. They can get some sponsorship and just run as many races as they can, because Ty Dillon is a very solid race car driver, and he's getting a top 20 at a road course here with the 96 cars equipment. Suarez wasn't even doing that last season. So I'll give him credit where credit is due. And Chase Elliott there in 21st. That's where he ended up finishing in this one. Oh, God, what a heartbreaker from him. Nothing more that he could have really done, in my opinion. He did everything he could within his power to win this race and put himself in a position to get at least a top 10 finish at the end of it. I don't know. What do you think of Chase Elliott here? I'm just
like,
blown away that what happened here.
Victim of circumstance, essentially. You knew going into that last restart, given the circumstances, it was going to be chaotic. Somebody wasn't going to make it out, and it just happened to be him. He gets put in the back, tries to come back through, ends up making a mistake, and trying to do too much and get too much back, and it ends up 21st, minus 20 from that last caution, which is a tough pill to swallow. But at the end of the day, if you're looking for silver linings, you were still the dominant car. You still had the fastest lap. You were still consistently 4, 5, 6 tenths up on the rest of the competition. So when you look at the rest of the season, you know you're going to be the guy to beat there. You're going to pick up a couple wins at least, unless things go catastrophically. So it's just kind of seeing if they have that championship kind of mentality of just kind of putting it behind them, go ahead to this next race and see what they can do.
For sure. James Davison, got to give him credit there in 23rd place as well. Very impressive showing for the 51 car. Has done
15.
well. 15. Oh, he's in the 51. 15, sorry. In this one.
Cody wears in the
Cody
51 all year.
They're always in the wrong freaking car. I swear he's been in the 51, though. I swear he's been in the 51. Yeah,
he was in the 51 last year.
Oh, God, they do it to me every time. Oh, man. 15 car for James Davison. Been very good on the road courses and every level that he's been a part of. And a 23rd place showing for them when he beat some of the guys right behind him there. Justin Haley, Bubba Wallace was up there. Just a lot of these guys, I know a lot of the big names had some problems there late in the going, so that kind of bumps up to where he was. But 23rd place, impressive from James Davison. And then the not-so-great notable finishers, Kyle Larson, 30th, Chase Briscoe, 32nd, William Byron, 33rd, and Matt DiBenedetto, 37th. Of course, Kyle Busch there in 35th as well. Ross Chastain back there in 39th. We alluded to those guys a little bit earlier on. Austin Dillon back there in 34th as well. So just a rough day overall for some of these guys that we were expecting a little bit more out of. And that's resulted in a kind of a wish-washy kind of top 10 with some guys getting up there that you maybe wouldn't have seen up there despite if it were not for these guys having some issues. So that is the notable finishers from the Daytona road course. Kyle, it is time for Cush's Threes for the first time in 2021. This is your big segment for anybody that's new. This is your big schmozzle for the episode. This is your time to shine. So without further ado, take it away.
Yeah, and we're doing things a little bit differently this year. Last year, I looked at just the Cup Series race and took 3 kind of noteworthy positive finishes and 3 noteworthy negative finishes. This time, we're mixing it up. We're going to spend a little bit more time looking at some of the other races throughout the weekend. In this case, it's looking at some of the Xfinity and truck races as well. So I picked one positive or maybe finish that maybe gets a little overlooked in the grand scheme of things from each race, both on the positive and negative side of things. So before I dive into things, Lukas, should I go Trucks Xfinity Cup or Cup Xfinity Trucks? Which way should I go?
Let's go Cup Xfinity Trucks, just because we just finished with the Cup. We'll talk about the Xfinity and Truck Series in quick succession here after the Cush's Threes. But yeah.
Yeah, so let's start with the Cup Series, and I'm glad you mentioned him. It's the Aussie getting the shout-out. James Davison in the number 15 Rick Ware entry, not just for getting that 23rd place finish, and a finish that was a little bit inflated because of some of the late issues to Larson, LaJoie, Briscoe, Byron, all those kind of guys that bumped up the finish a handful of positions. It's the fact that on average lap time, James Davison was faster than the number 6 Roush Fenway Ryan Newman. Wow. On average lap time, both in terms of single fastest lap and average race time for the race, only including 105% lap time, so excluding all the caution laps and everything like that, James Davison was faster than Ryan Newman. And Ryan Newman, we know, isn't a great road racer, but it's still Roush Fenway equipment, and it's still Rick Ware equipment. Wow. So James Davison, the Aussie, he's had some nice results there for Rick Ware in the past. Nice little shout out to him for getting that top 25 early on in the season. Next, we go to Xfinity now. And I'm looking at Brandon Brown with that 8th place finish, getting that top 10 there. Wasn't really in the conversation for much of the day, but kept his nose clean, took advantage of the situation. And for Brandon Brown this season, it's going to be taking advantage when he can, because it's going to be a very, very tight or very difficult points battle for him to get back into the playoffs like they were last year with some of these new entries to the field this year, and a great start to them for them in terms of just gathering points this season and getting a solid top 10 here when a lot of people around them, you would assume in that kind of points battle, ended up having issues as well. Brandon Brown, not really known for being a fantastic road course racer. He was kind of in that 18th to 22nd range in terms of fastest lap time. I don't have it offhand, but to pick up a 10th or a top 10 is huge for that team early on in the season. Hopefully they can carry that momentum forward. And finally, on the positive side here to the Truck Series, it's another 8th place finisher. And I knew he was going to be my guy the entire weekend, going into the race, coming out of it, all of it. It's Kaz Grala in the 02 Young's Motorsports truck, matching their best ever finish at a road course with 8th place. Probably could have had a couple more positions as well. Kaz Grala, man, what can I say? This guy should have a full-time ride 100% with at least a decent team in any of the 3 ranks. Instead, he's kind of floating around doing kind of what becomes available for him. Did the colleague Daytona 500, now went to the Daytona road course for Young's Motorsports when Chris Wright decided to just focus on the Xfinity race that he was doing there for Sam Hunt. And Grala goes out and once again shows why he's a very, very solid and kind of underrated prospect here in NASCAR. A very strong top 10 performance with kind of an underfunded team in the Truck Series. Now we go to the negative side, and it's the side that I hate doing because I wish I could just give like all the shout outs in the world, but you got to kind of point out some of the disappointing finishes as well. And we start with the Cup Series with one Ryan Blaney, and I really
very good one.
Don't know what happened to this team here. In the Busch Clash, their fastest time was a 1:56.9. In this race, it was a full second slower, a 1:58.0. In terms of average lap time throughout this entire race, they were 22nd in speed, below Eric Almirola, Ryan Preece, Chris Buescher, Ross Chastain, Michael McDowell. Like, I don't know what happened to this team. They went from being kind of the front runner at the Busch Clash at this exact same track to a couple weeks later being a complete non-factor. So I don't know what happened there for that 12 team. I hope that's not a sign of things to come because I think that this could be a really big breakout year for Ryan Blaney, as do you. Not the result that I was kind of looking for them in this one. For Xfinity, it's kind of obvious for this one. It's AJ Allmendinger. He was great in the Cup Series race. But in Xfinity, kind of the inexperience, I guess you could say, shone through in the fact that he's never raced for stage points before. And it's a new thing for him running for those kind of stage finishes before at the road courses. It would be him usually pitting before the stage finish, getting that track position going ahead. And in this case, he wasn't in that situation. He was going for the stage win and was just overly aggressive in a circumstance where he didn't need to be. I think it's going to be a learning experience for him going forward the rest of the season, given the stage situations, which he's not really used to running in. And just kind of unfortunate because we would have had a great kind of 3-way battle there, I think, with Ty Gibbs getting into the conversation later on in that race between obviously Gibbs, the eventual winner, Cindric, and Allmendinger. Instead, we get a wreck there, and Allmendinger finishes with, instead of at least 10 guaranteed and a playoff point, 2 total for the day. So I think definitely a big disappointment in that regard. And finally, for the Truck Series one, this one kind of hurts to say because I feel like it might be being a little too harsh early on here. But I'm looking at Haley Deegan here for this one. She's got a lot of access to a lot of sim time. She's got a lot of access to a lot of things with kind of the Ford development program there. And she was a complete non-factor for this entire Truck Series race. But it's not just that. It's the fact that she kept it clean until the last little bit there. She was in the conversation for a top 12, top 15 finish. And on those last couple of restarts, she had some contact, had a couple issues, and ended up finishing 28th as well. So the big thing for me is looking at some of the lap time data and seeing that Tanner Gray, who is somebody who 3 years ago was running in pro stock, had a fastest lap, almost 2.5 seconds faster than Deegan's lap time in this one. She was barely inside the top 30 in terms of fastest lap. So I expected more from her in this one, just given the resources available to her. She's run not IMSA, but the lower series before at the Daytona road course for it as well with their development program. I expected a little bit more from her in this one. Still interested to see where they go this entire season, but just given what we saw from Riley Herbst, especially, he kind of surprised me in that race, how well he's looked on the road courses. He's kind of a sneaky guy on the road courses. He's got to actually perform at most tracks before I say anything there. Okay. But yeah, I'm sorry. You're getting a little ahead of yourself there. But for Deegan, just seeing how well her teammates did in the same equipment and how poor she did, that was kind of a discipline that I was interested to see where she was at, and was a little bit lackluster there. Obviously, the truck race kind of got chaotic at the end, so it was kind of tough to really pull anything from that finish. But maybe it's being harsh a little too early on, just given kind of all the attention that's put towards her. But just disappointing there. It would have been great to see her keep the nose clean and just get a solid finish there, but instead just trying to do a little too much at the end, ended up wrecking, causing a caution, and ended up finishing 28th. So that's Cush's threes for the first one. A nice little mix there from some small teams getting some good finishes, some nice points days for some people maybe looking to sneak their way into playoffs, somebody looking for full-time rides into the future, and on the opposite side, some big name teams underperforming in kind of the first real weekend to show what you got.
Yeah, there was quite a few names you could have picked from in this one, so I got to give you credit for trying to pick some names there. Timmy Hill was another one I looked at in that truck series one. If you didn't pick Kaz Grau, finishing right behind them in 9th for the 56 truck, like that's pretty damn strong.
And that's exactly
Timmy Hill.
Right? Like, just keep your nose clean and be there at the finish, and that's exactly what the 56 truck did. They do it time and time again, whether it's Tyler or Timmy Hill behind the wheel, Gustine as well for the 500 there. I really thought about them, but for Grauler, the big thing for me was top 10 speed and top 10 finish in that O2 truck, which was very, very impressive. So got to give my boy Kaz a shout out.
For sure. And he liked our Instagram post the other week too. So you got a
couple of them.
We got to give him a little bit of an extra bonus there. That was Cush's threes for the first time in 2021. I'm very happy that it's back. It all feels right in the world that Cush's threes is back. So one last little bit of note, we saved it here a little bit here prior to at the end of the Daytona road course race for the Cup Series. Chip Ganassi has been fined $30,000 and handed a one-race suspension for violating COVID-19 protocols. He brought somebody that was not supposed to be into the racetrack, it seemed, into the racetrack, which is a no-no, a big no-no, and hence the $30,000 penalty and a one-race suspension for whatever race he decides to come to next, if that's Homestead, if he was planning to or whatnot. I don't know how they're going to decide that or put that up to discretion, but $30,000 was the significant fine there. And it's good to see that NASCAR is hammering down on even some of the sport's highest figures here in Chip Ganassi, and shows that nobody is above the law or the rules that are being set in place for this virus and keep everybody safe. So props to NASCAR on that respect. Chip,
Absolutely.
you got to do a little bit better here, man. You can't be doing this stuff. We all know what's going on right now, and it's just not safe to be doing this. So unfortunate that we have to have this kind of negative note here to end the NASCAR weekend at Daytona. But nonetheless, I'm very proud of NASCAR that they are stepping up to the plate here, and you know, they're addressing it head on. They're not, doing this underneath the rug, and props to them.
Yeah, no, they're not shying away from it, regardless as to who it is. We saw somebody from the Truck Series race in the season opener as well get an indefinite suspension as well. Somebody, not like somebody super notable with the team, but here a very noteworthy figure getting a pretty big fine, obviously, for Chip Ganassi. I'm sure that's like a couple pennies for him, but it's
that's
at
just
least
pocket change.
Yeah, exactly. But it's still showing that they're serious about this stuff. You need to abide by the guidelines, because this can easily fall apart. We've seen it across the board with many different sports. It doesn't take much for this to kind of all fall apart. NASCAR has been lucky with it so far. But if people continue to kind of be more lenient with it, it's kind of inevitable that something will happen. So I'm glad to see NASCAR not shy away from it, make it public as well, and make sure that people are abiding by these guidelines.
For sure. All right. I think that does it for the NASCAR Cup Series. Unless we got to rank this race, I think, as well. We got to give this a thing. We got to give it out of a 10. Come on, we got to do it.
So the interesting thing here I want to point out first is Jeff Gluck's poll, of course. It's always the best. It's always a very interesting read as to where kind of people are feeling for the race. I was surprised by how high it was given everything that happened at the end. Right now, as we say, 16,000 votes. 81%, yes, it was a good race. So I voted yes, it was a good race.
Yes.
But Does that mean yes, 8 out of 10? Does that mean yes, like 6 out of 10? Because I guess like 6 is still above average, which means good race.
Because good can mean a whole bunch of different things. Because it can mean like it's above average, so it's good. But is it like great, like where you think it's amazing, or is it just good?
So, do you want to go first on this one? You want me to go first? I don't really know for this one.
I can go for this one.
Okay.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because when you look at everything that happened, it was kind of chaotic, but at the same time, we did have good racing. We had a lot of passing, lots of comers and goers, maybe not at the front for the first half of the race. We had some strategy in there as well. Besides the rain caution, if we look past that, there was some strategy involved to get some stage points in there, which is nice to see. It's not just the simple strategy that we usually see where the race leaders come down, just kind of forget about stage points and race for the victory there. But even if there wasn't cautions there, I don't even know if there would be the strategy of that pitting before the stage breaks would have paid off with the amount of chaos that we saw in restarts and everything like that. So it's probably best that we had this kind of thing where the guys that were up front get the points that they most likely deserve. Maybe not the exact number that they should have deserved, but nonetheless, I'm going to give this one, I'm going to give it a 8. I'm going to give it an 8. 7.5. 7.5.
Okay.
Okay. I'm very happy with the race winner. That leads a lot into it for me. But like I had with the Daytona 500, I want the finish and the entire race to encapsulate what I thought. And I was very entertained by this race. I wasn't entertained by the Daytona 500, hence my 2 score for that one. But this one, I'm very pleased with how the race unfolded at the end. Gave us a sprint to the line. It wasn't just a 2-lap shootout. It was about a 5-lap stint there where Bell had to try and chase him down. There was the question mark on whether he would catch Logano or not. And if he got to him, how would he get there? And how would he try and pass him? I thought that was entertaining. And I liked it the final lap. I know we would love to see a last chicane kind of move. But at the end of the day, I did like just kind of relishing in the moment that Bell is going to be getting his first career victory. And despite the incidents with the rain, I bumped that down about a mark, I'd say, on it, just based off of how it kind of conflicted the entire events and after that. But at the end of the day, I'm pretty happy with how the race unfolded from start to finish. It had a lot of different strategy elements and it had some pretty good racing, and we didn't just get to see a dominant show from Chase Elliott the entire time, which is something that I feared coming into it. So at the end of the day, I'll take this one. I'll give it a 7.5.
Yeah, the 8 was a bit rich for me. 7.5 is more in line with me. I'm just going to go with the straight 7 on this one. The end chaos, I just don't like messy races and messy finishes and stuff, and we kind of got that at the end a little bit. If it stayed green, I think it probably is only like a half point to a full point better. So it's not like a huge difference, but it was definitely an improvement on last year's race. 750 horsepower package is the way to go on road courses. It gives you those situations where just the throttle response is more, so you can have more
driver
wheel
comes
spin.
into play.
Exactly, the driver comes into play more. Exactly, so you've got those situations where on downshifts and stuff, you've got wheel hop and you've got people going into tire barriers like Larson did, trying to pass for second place and ultimately going for the win. You have restarts where people don't get going and that kind of stuff. So overall, I think the race was still really solid. It still was a good race, just not that super high echelon one. So I'll give it a straight 7.
Fair enough. I can I agree with your opinion there. That's I think this is a respectable grade. It was a good race at the end of the day, so
yes.
We'll give it that. So let's move on to the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series. We'll look at these a little bit quicker for sure than the Cup Series, but a lot of action took place in these things that I couldn't even try to recap.
Oh my goodness!
Because it was even more chaotic and more messy.
The Truck Series race this year was longer than the Cup Series one last year.
Thanks for taking my fact, Mr. Cushman. No, but nonetheless, the Truck Series, which one do you want to look at first? The Trucks or Xfinity?
Let's go Trucks first.
Okay, let's look at the Truck Series. So it started in the rain. So when we talked to you last prior to this episode, we were recording this episode just mere hours before the race, and there was the potential, and after we did recording, it was confirmed it would be a wet start to this one for the Truck Series at the Daytona Road Course, and I was pretty entertained, I have to be honest, about the entirety of this race. Lots of comers and goers as well in this one. Mistakes. I think it was too messy for me at some points in time, just because people just couldn't keep the truck on the road, it seemed.
We just couldn't get green flag laps.
No, and I think on top of it, they did not take nearly as long, or well, they took more time than the Cup Series did with trying to clean up wrecks and stuff. There's so many long caution laps, it felt like, for the Truck Series and Xfinity Series. It's the entire weekend. I don't know what the heck happened if they had their B team on there for the two previous events and they saved their A team for the Cup Series. But man, oh man, there was like 4 or 5 caution laps, and I'm like, can we just get this thing going again? They were just running off laps, and then we ended up getting 3 overtimes in this one. Like, it was just absolutely chaos because nobody could get through the first corner, it seemed, without absolutely plowing into someone. And if they did, International Horseshoe was just sitting around there, and then they would all just wreck going into there.
Exactly.
Like, it was just crazy. For the second consecutive week in this one, we had the same stage winners, John Hunter Nemechek and Rafael Lessard win the stages, as well as the eventual race winner was the exact same. Not the same stages. Rafael Lessard won stage 2 this week, won stage 1 last week.
Almost
Hunter
perfect.
Nemechek, almost. I don't think he even picked it up on the broadcast, so that's a little bit of a tidbit for you. But Ben Rhodes ends up winning this one, but with lots of drama behind him. John Hunter Nemechek seemed like he had the fastest truck, and this one was up at the front leading laps, and then they just pushed the fuel too long for some stupid reason. I don't know why they ran that thing out of gas, but he was kind of on an off pit cycle where he stayed out at the end of stage 1 after winning it, and kind of went for a green flag pit stop strategy there in stage 2. And then he ran it dry out of gas. And then he had to get pushed back to the pit lane, going 1 lap down. And you all think, oh man, he's done for this race. So I texted Kyle, I'm like, oh man, my guy is leading.
Gloating pretty good.
My guy's leading. Rafael Lessard, my pick, is leading the race. And they had a split screen where John Hunter Nemechek is stopped on track and Rafael Lessard is leading the race. And I'm like, oh man, this is looking pretty great. I got to be honest. And just like every single text I texted Kyle this weekend, it came back to bite me in the butt really, really bad. I cannot believe my luck. I'm going to shut up from now on when it comes to these races. But Rafael Lessard with a solid run there for the first 2 stages, had a rough third stage, to say the least. But John Hunter Nemechek was a story, a show in this one, coming from the back to the front, and ended up getting his lap back and contending for the win. Was up front there. It seemed like he was maybe the favorite in those final 2 restarts, but he had burned those tires up trying to get back up to the front there, and he had nothing left to fight the front duo of Sheldon Creed and Ben Rhodes. I couldn't even tell you how many cautions or who got involved in wrecks at the end of this one.
Everyone.
There is no point in me trying to dissect that.
No.
But at the end of the day, Ben Rhodes put on an exceptional performance there, holding off Sheldon Creed, conserving his stuff to an extent, I would say, where he had more to work with at the end of it rather than Sheldon Creed and John Hunter Nemechek. And that was ultimately the difference maker in this one. And Ben Rhodes goes back-to-back, gets multiple wins for the first time in his career in the Truck Series in a single season. So very impressive stuff from Ben Rhodes to start the season off like this. It's funny because he was the last guy in on our Truck Series season preview, and he is already off to 2 consecutive wins.
That was just kind of the way that the cookie crumbles, but it is kind of funny that way. Yeah.
Still, at the end of the day, oh God, what a crazy race. What a crazy race. What are your thoughts on this one?
As well, Sheldon Creed should have been the control guy, and then he pulls an Ambrose, can't get it refired, loses a couple spots, and Ben Rhodes kind of sails, obviously doesn't sail away with it, but he maintains control of the lead the entire way, and Creed can't get back by him. It was kind of funny how that played out as well, but seems like we definitely have a big 3 so far this season in Rhodes, Nemechek, and Creed throughout the first couple of races here, at least. All 3 of them garnering the most 3 points in each race so far. That could be a nice little fun battle throughout the season. Obviously, there's going to be more people come into play, but looks like he got a main guy at ThorSport. Looks like you might have a main guy at KBM back competing for the championship as well. And Creed, we expected as well to be the main guy over there at GMS. So a very fun start to the Truck Series season. Would have been nice if we could have kept it a little bit more green throughout these first couple races. A lot of caution laps. Yeah. But you know what? That's okay. It happens. It's the Truck Series. We kind of expect it a lot of the time, but yeah, definitely shaping up to be a very fun season. Ben Rhodes looking to have potentially a huge breakout season here. Was consistent these last few seasons, but hasn't been able to go out and get the multiple wins that he needs to kind of prove his worth and get to that next level. Looks to be doing so this season.
Yeah, and he's not usually in the playoff mix just because he has that lack of wins and playoff points built up. But if he can get those accumulated very early on in this season, he's going to have a really good shot of going deep into these playoffs. And 2 wins to start the season is very, very handy.
And a week off to kind of relish it as well, because they're not running here at Homestead coming up.
God, the Truck Series is always so good at Homestead. Everything's so good at Homestead. Everything.
It's almost like it's the best mile and a half or something.
You'd think we would have ranked it like that. Oh, wait, we did.
We did.
We are on it. We are on it. I just wanted to point out some big names from the Truck Series that did well. Of course, the top 3, the Hunter Nemechek gets maybe driver of the day in terms of how he came back through the field there to finish 3rd. Sheldon Creed just fell short of the victory there in 2nd. Todd Gilliland in 4th place. Very impressive showing from him. And then his fellow Ford teammate in 5th with Riley Herbst. David Gilliland Racing, what a showing for that team this weekend, the 38 and 17. Very impressive. I got to say, I mean, I'm a little bit higher on Riley Herbst than you are, but I was not expecting that level of performance from the 17 truck at a road course here when you had some very competitive trucks going up against them. So credit to both of those guys on a very solid top 5 day. And Matt Crafton in 6th. I don't know what the heck happened with Crafton. I felt like he was in the back sometimes, recovering from a spin or he was all over the place.
He got pushed out of the way as well by Nemechek on one of those last restarts, I do believe as well. He wasn't too happy about that one. So but no, again, he was kind of in the conversation last year at the road course here as well, and kind of a sneaky kind of contender. We always think about some of the young guys first in terms of race winners and especially contenders on the road courses, because it's not really been as much of a focal point in the Truck Series schedule especially. But Matt Crafton, sneaky kind of road course guy here in the Truck Series, consistently in the conversation.
Derek Kraus, 7th, the guy that I have making the playoffs, only had 30 points. And there's guys that were further behind him that scored more points than him. So Derek Kraus was very much in the mid-pack, 20th, and was just able to get himself a top 10 somehow. Was definitely nowhere near that kind of pace in this race, but got a top 10 out of it, and they will definitely take that after
those are the results they need if they're going to point their way into the playoffs here. It's going to be super tough for them. I like that team. I like Kraus, especially at the majority of tracks that they go to here. But
I think he's going to win.
Exactly. I think he's a candidate to win as well. But he's a guy that needed to capitalize and kind of maximize the points he gets here. Picking up a 7th place finish, keeping it clean, that's absolutely huge for them.
After his horrendous Daytona on the high banks, he needed some luck here in this one, and thankfully he put himself in the right position at the right time. And then of course the 2 we alluded to earlier, Canscroll and Timmy Hill, and then Christian Eckes in the 98 truck making his first start for ThorSport this season. Looked very, very weird to see that on top of the door, to see Christian Eckes
especially
there,
but it kind of looks the exact same as the Enfinger trucks as well. It was very weird.
It does. It just doesn't feel right, but at least he's over there. Toyota. Christian Eckes gets a top 10 in his ThorSport debut. Stuart Friesen had a very solid truck, I felt, in this one. Just got kind of shuffled back on some of the restarts there, and I think he ran wide as well on one of those late restarts too in turn 1, and that really cost him some spots. So pretty solid showing there. He's a pretty nifty overall driver, I'd say, but on the road courses, he could be someone to keep your eye on. He's good on dirt, and I think that kind of translates a little bit to the road courses, not as much as what people maybe exaggerate it to be.
But car control more in general, but for sure.
Yeah, Chandler Smith in 12th had an up and down day. Felt like he was in the top 5, top 7 for the majority of the race, but he was nowhere near the speed that his teammate had. He was just kind of keeping it clean and getting out of everybody's way so that he just stayed up there while other people made mistakes around him.
You anticipate that for a guy that doesn't have a ton of experience on road courses as well. But definitely another strong performance. And with that, 4th overall in Truck Series points after a couple races.
Yeah, 33 points. So I alluded to earlier, a guy that had more points than Derek Kraus. That just shows you how many stage points Chandler Smith accumulated in this one compared to Derek Kraus. I don't even know if Kraus gathered any, but Camden Murphy gets 13th place there, and another Ford. The Fords were actually very solid for the limited showing that they have as a manufacturer.
Yeah.
To have 3 trucks inside the top 15 is very, very impressive. And that 8 truck, I did not notice him. I felt like almost the entire race, but it was just kind of a lot of guys had issues there on those final
finished
couple
the
laps.
race, and honestly, you were getting a good finish in this one. So
Yeah, exactly. And then the rest of them, you kind of expect some of them to be there. I don't know if you want to point
to
any
give
of
one
them.
more shout out to Carson Hocevar in 14th there. He was
Okay.
having a pretty solid day, ended up wrecking up pit road to be able to get back there and salvage the top 15.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I think there was like a puddle there still or something and hydroplaned and whatever the hell happened there, but to still get a 14th place finish. Yeah. Carson Hocevar, 6th in Truck Series points after a couple races. How about that?
I would have never thought that would be the case, but we'll see how long he can continue this. Maybe they over there at Nice, they found some
Nice in general
speed
as well has had some kind of standout. Obviously hasn't had a standout finish quite yet, really, but showing some of that speed early on that they didn't really have last year. So positive signs for that team.
Brett Moffitt in 25th. Interesting on that regard.
What happened there? Again, I can't remember. I don't know. There was so many wrecks at the end there, but
dude, it's been so long since Friday night. I don't know what the heck's happened.
Okay, to be fair, everyone wrecked at the end. So
yeah, I don't even know who has not a scratch on their truck after this one. I think they're all pretty much torn up. But
yeah.
That does it for the Truck Series. Very entertaining race, chaotic, messy. I don't know. It just kind of felt like the theme of the weekend.
Yeah.
This was specifically the one with lots of caution laps. But at the end of the day, when it was green flag racing, it was entertaining. Just a lot of yeah, exactly. So let's look at the Xfinity Series quickly before we wrap up today's episode. And this one was maybe the less entertaining of the three this weekend on how you want to characterize it in terms of the on-track product.
I think that's a fair comment to make.
But I still think it was a pretty solid Xfinity Series race for a road course, and it provided some excitement, especially when you mentioned earlier with AJ Allmendinger and Austin Cindric getting into each other to end stage one. I missed the beginning part of that, and as soon as I turned the TV on, they're coming to the start-finish line, and I'm like, oh, okay, stage one's over. Who's going to win it? Oh, Allmendinger's wrecked. So very poor block
Riley
there.
Herbst came out of it worse, too.
I felt so bad for Herbst. But the thing is, he kind of put it on himself there, so it's just frustrating in that regard.
Yeah.
But Allmendinger gets wrecked there, and grass and splitter equals bad. But not for Kurt Busch, not for some of these other guys. But
not for Ty Gibbs.
Not for Ty Gibbs, but for Kyle Busch and AJ Allmendinger, grass was not their friend this weekend. And unfortunately for Allmendinger, after getting spun off the nose of the 22, that's not Cindric's fault. In really I'd put it maybe 98 to 10 in terms of percentage blame on that one for Allmendinger. Just he admitted it himself that he was going too aggressive there. Yep. Ends up getting pushed into the grass, destroying the front end of that car, taking away all the front downforce off of it.
Doesn't get any stage points either.
He didn't. That was probably the most painful thing I've ever seen, where he is literally 100 feet from the start-finish line to get some points, and he's just
from literally quadrupling the point total they would have got from that race. But
yeah, oh god, it felt like again, I don't want to mention Lightning McQueen too much, but in the first Cars movie when he just stops
recently or something.
No, I haven't, and maybe that's why I've been talking about it too much. Okay. But he just stops before the start-finish line. He's just looking at it and waiting, and then Chick Hicks just goes right past him. But nonetheless, I can just talk about that movie all day long. But Austin Cindric there gets the stage one win. Obviously we expect that from Austin Cindric, but he did tear up that right front pretty badly after that contact, which forced him to pit there after the stage and had to recover. And he was very much in the mix of things, which we'll talk about in a second. But AJ was done, and as you mentioned, Riley Herbst running fourth at that point in time was doing a fantastic job for that 98 team. He would I think it was Mike Snyder that was in front of him at that point in time, and Snyder ducked low, and he got around it, but then Herbst tried to follow him.
That's right.
And he got into the grass, and he destroyed the front end of his car, and he was done for the day. So disappointing there for both AJ and Herbst. They could have been definitely in the mix of things come the end of that one, but it was not to be for either of those guys. Thankfully, though, a Monster Energy car does end up in victory lane at the end of this one. I don't know how the spotters keep it straight sometimes if those two cars are on the track at the same time, but nonetheless, my Slider also won a stage, I believe. No, he didn't. No, he was right up at the front. He was right there. He finished second in the first stage. That's why I'm referring to him. Finishing very, very solidly in the first stage. Then Ty Gibbs wins stage two in this one. I was thoroughly impressed up into that point. I didn't know how long he could continue it, but he was definitely doing his damnedest to try and keep it up there. Harrison Burton finishing second in that one, a 1-2-3 there for JGR to finish stage 2 with Daniel Hemrick there having a good showing in the 18 car. Cindric had already worked his way all the way back up to 6th at that point in time, so he showed that car was no worse for wear. Oh, man. At the end of this thing, Ty Gibbs wins the Xfinity Series race on the Daytona road course. There's a lot of things I just missed there. I kind of jumped from point A to point B there.
I think that's okay.
I can't recap everything that happened in between those two because there's so much strategy, so many cautions, so many different people getting caught up in wrecks. But at the end of the day, Ty Gibbs with fresher tires at the end of this one pulls off a masterful performance in this one. His first career Xfinity Series race, he ends up victorious on a road course where he finished only second in the ARCA race last season, and he goes out there and schools the best in the Xfinity Series where names are made. He beats Austin Cindric, arguably the favorite to win this one. Your pick to win the Xfinity Series race. Of course, I picked Allmendinger, but then we don't talk about that. But nonetheless, Ty Gibbs, the grandson of Joe Gibbs, whatever you want to say about this kid, he is miraculous. He is so talented. There's no denying that. You can talk about how much he's had the opportunity kind of given to him just based off of heritage and family, of course. But this kid is a heck of a wheelman, and the fact that he won in his first career start is unbelievable. He's up there. I think he's the 6th driver to ever win in his first career start.
But the first to ever do it without having Cup Series starts beforehand.
Yeah, and I believe he's not the youngest, but he's like 3rd youngest all time in the Xfinity Series to win. I know Logano holds the record because he was calling the race and he would not stop mentioning it. But
it was part of the storyline. It was fun.
I'll give him that. But like you said, it was funny that they had Drew Blickensturfer and Joey Logano in the booth for this one. It was get credit to that for Fox for setting that duo up. But at the end of the day, what more can you say about Ty Gibbs, Kyle? What an incredible performance from him. Yeah. And he just was able to get around cars on those late restarts, and he kept the car as clean as possible, getting in the grass here and there, despite some other things. But Ty Gibbs, victorious at the Daytona road course.
Yeah, for starters, maybe somebody should go out and give Michael Self a road course ride or something like that because he beat this kid last year at this track, maybe. I don't know. But no, Ty Gibbs is unreal. And everybody who thought that he was just kind of a guy that was getting results from the equipment he's in because of the last name, blah, 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 that was all stupid. Look, at the end of the day, this kid's an unbelievable race car driver. And I think watching him going forward is going to be fantastic. I didn't know what to expect from him coming into the Xfinity Series, making these handful of starts for that 54 car. But I expected him to be pretty solid, just as I expect later this season in junior motorsports equipment, Sam Mayer to be very solid in those starts as well. And Ty Gibbs goes out and does the kind of unthinkable because we've literally never seen somebody of his age and somebody making their first ever Xfinity start go out and do that in that fashion. Just unbelievable to, even though Cindric's car was damaged, to still be able to hold him off and still be able to race with him was insane. Just the storyline writes itself. It's really remarkable. Yeah. It's going to be fascinating to see what he can do at, again, some of the more normal race car NASCAR tracks at the mile and a halves once he gets to those. But that 54 car, we expected them to win. I don't know if we expected Ty Gibbs to win. Unbelievable. The fact that there's veterans in this field, the fact that there's youngsters that are very, very strong at road courses in this field, and he went out in his first ever start and beat them all. Props to Ty Gibbs, man. This kid is a wheelman.
Great to see the emotion afterwards as well. You show how much it means to him. You never see that. Well, I should say never, but you don't see that very much these days. And so ecstatic. A weekend of first for JGR with Christopher Bell and Ty Gibbs ending up victorious. Toyota sweeps the weekend at the Daytona road course as well in all three series. So just a productive weekend in terms of all of that for Toyota. They have to feel great about their future right now. We'll see what happens with Ty Gibbs' future beyond this season, because I think they have him only slated to drive like 5 races right now for the 50.
There's still 54. Like a decent amount of races that are kind of unaccounted for with that.
They need to fill.
So I don't know, because he's eligible to run every single race. To be
Yes,
fair, like
he's old
he's
enough.
18. He's already this isn't a Sam Mayer situation where Mayer has to wait until his birthday later in June for him to be eligible to run most of these races. Gibbs is eligible to do it right now. So
Yeah.
I don't really know why maybe he isn't running more of them. He's obviously doing ARCA full time. That's probably his focus here. But I don't know what races he's scheduled to run here. But he doesn't have the youngest winner label, but he has the youngest road course winner label. So at least there's something there for him. But
As well in the 54, I saw Bob Pocker's tweet out just quickly. Truex is getting the March date for Atlanta, and Kyle Busch is getting a July date for Atlanta. They switched that up, so it's vice versa now. So I don't know why that got kind of confused in the press release when they did announce that, but just had to point that out. But yeah, just an incredible Xfinity Series storyline here. The race itself was solid. It wasn't spectacular, but it was very, very right on par with what maybe we were expecting. The race winner blew us away. So that's all you need to know about that in that regard. But I made a graphic as well. I'm going to shout myself out for this one.
Yes, you should, because it's an excellent one as well.
Thank you very much. To commemorate Ty Gibbs' first career victory, I felt like I had to do a little bit of something for him, and I'm pretty happy with how it all turned out.
So according to Wikipedia, which maybe not the best source, we know Gibbs' next race will be the fifth race of the Xfinity Series season, which is at Phoenix Raceway on March 13th. He's slated to run apparently 10 races in that car. I don't know what the other ones are because it only has listed 2, 5, and TBA, but apparently they've committed 10 races to him, which makes sense because the only other one that can run other than the 5 that Kyle Busch is doing is Ty Dillon right now, and he's got 4 slated. So I would expect to see probably those numbers bumped up for the rest of them, especially given if he can continue these performances. But that's going to be fun the rest of the season, especially once we get Sam Mayer in that number 8 junior motorsports vehicle as well, because we're going to have guys going from battling for ARCA East and ARCA victories all the way up to Xfinity, which is going to be fun to see. But yeah, I think this is going to be a year where those two guys really start to show themselves as kind of the next couple of guys coming up in NASCAR. We saw them go head to head in ARCA last year, and already one of them is an Xfinity winner. It's only a matter of time before Sam Mayer joins him, I think.
Yeah, and shout out to Chris Gale as well. The demotion from the Cup Series last year ends up getting a victory here with Ty Gibbs in his second start back in the Xfinity Series.
Yeah, you can do worse than succeeding with the grandson of the owner. Yeah, I think that might be well for him going into the future here.
You think? So really solid showing from there. Just quickly on the notable finishers from this one, there's a couple. Miguel Paludo. I
First
totally
NASCAR race in 8 years?
I totally forgot about it, but I remember watching him in the Truck Series. I believe it was in the 32 truck. He was pretty solid back then. He was up at the front for a lot of time, and nice to see him back in the Xfinity Series with Junior Motorsports.
Yeah, first NASCAR race since 2013. So. Yeah.
It's been a while. It's been a very long time. But he's been racing down in Brazil. I believe they said in the broadcast.
Yeah,
obviously he's from
Porsche
Brazil.
GT3 Cup.
Yeah, okay. And then he, in the 8 car for Junior Motorsports, brings it home 7th. He had an up-and-down day. He suffered some tire problems, but gets the top 10 at the end of it. Brandon Brown, like you obviously said, in Cush's 3's 8th. Jeremy Clements in 10th, a very sneaky road course racer, obviously is a winner in the Xfinity Series on a road course there at Road America. So he has had some previous success on these kinds of tracks. So good to see that 51 car, getting back in the right direction this season after a down 2020 season. Brett Moffitt there, 11th in this one, hey? Interesting. Nonetheless, but wouldn't you know it? But all jokes aside on Brett Moffitt, really good showing from him.
To win a truck race and make the playoffs so badly. Oh, you don't even know. Oh.
I don't.
This is the most random rivalry thing possible.
Oh, I know.
And I love it.
I never would have thought Brett Moffitt would get us this torn apart on an opinion, but here we are, 11th for Brett Moffitt. He was inside the top 5 for a lot of this event, but ends up falling back to 11th there. So
I really wish we got to see Andy Lally in the 03 there, because that would have been really fun to see in that level of equipment. But
nonetheless, Landon Castle 12th, putting his past Daytona on the oval, having that poor finish there with that wreck laid on.
Yeah.
He gets a top 12 run there, so very impressive from him. Mike Schneider there in 13th place, had a good run, finishing second in that first stage, was kind of consistent up there, fell back as the race wore on. Jesse Little there in the 78 car in 14th place, so that's very, very solid from him. I don't know. You want to look at anybody else here? Up to you.
I guess one more shout out I'll give is Chris Wright in the 18, making his kind of real debut for the Xfinity series here and going out and getting a solid top 20 finish with Sam Hunt. We don't know what really to expect from that team this season. There's some big names associated with that team. There's TRD-ish stuff there, so we don't really know what to expect from them. But for a guy that doesn't really have road course experience to go out, get a top 20 finish with a mid-pack team, I figured I'd give that shout out.
Natalie Decker finishes 40th there, so that's not the greatest in her
an early
debut.
issue there. Didn't really get any clean laps in, unfortunate to see, because, again, laps is what she needs, and unfortunately some stuff out of her control led to that as well. Ryan Vargas as well, an early end to his day.
With the big sponsor.
Jade Buford as well was having a strong run before they had some suspension issues. So a lot of solid racers in this one with unfortunate finishes, but opened the door for some other people. And I think the big one to look at capitalizing here is Jeb Burton finishing top 5. Was nowhere near that for most of this day in terms of raw pace, but again, kept it clean, went out there, finished 5th, get a big point haul, and that's going to be big for them the rest of this year. Exactly.
Stay out late on cautions, man. It's kind of been the trend over the years. You got to take the track position where it will give you. There's most likely going to be cautions, and especially in cases like the Cup Series where they just pitted for green flag pit stops, and there's no need to give up that track position there. And
most importantly, evens up the Jeb versus Harrison battle 1-1 this season. Harrison finished one position ahead of him at the Daytona Tri-Oval. Exactly. And then second race of the year, Jeb finishes one place ahead of him. So a nice little start there for the Burtons this season. I think that might be a little fun thing to keep track of the season. I think Harrison probably pulls it out as the season goes along, but to start here, Burton back to back. So I guess we'll have to see if that trend continues this weekend.
For sure. Also, quickly on Fox's pre-race coverage with Boyer and Jeff Gordon, I have to give that a shout out. Very well done, Fox.
That's pronunciation of it, but
oh god, don't even, man. I was so mad. When they just can't pronounce Boyer's name right. But props to Fox on getting that little feature done. It was very well done. The rental car is just getting destroyed. Is just kind of every man's dream, it feels like. But that's all the news, notes, race recaps from this past weekend at the Daytona Road Course. Any final thoughts before we wrap up today's episodes, Kyle?
Yeah, it was messy at times, but at the end of the day, it was still pretty fun at the Daytona Road Course, and it was nice to have that to start the season, but we get a bit of a break here from the road courses before we kind of get them thick and fast later this season. Yeah. We get into the meat and potatoes here of the season coming up, and we started off pretty nice with Homestead here. That's going to be a ton of fun.
It's a good start.
Looking at the starting order as well, seeing Tyler Reddick come from the back is going to be fun to see as well. I think Larson, even though he has a bad finish, he's probably going to have a good fastest lap, so he might be kind of in the middle there as well. Those are kind of the two names that kind of stand out as potential kind of guys to go out and win that race. But then obviously you've got like your Denny Hamlins and stuff. But fun weekend. Again, staying down in Florida for another fantastic racetrack. Should be another fun weekend coming up.
Yeah, this is the third and final weekend coming up in Florida for a while. So they're going to end it off nice at Homestead, probably the best racetrack to kind of end the Florida stint there. The Florida swing, I guess you could call it. Instead of the West Coast swing, we've got the Florida swing to start the season. So hopefully I can get my fantasy righted in the next episode.
I hope not.
We'll see what happens in this one. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at The Green Flag. Follow us on Twitter at The Green Flag Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. We'd really appreciate it. Make sure to follow the Fantasy League and join us in that. It's never too late to join the Fantasy League. Exactly. After the start that we've had, you can definitely make up some points. It is not that hard to do. It's been a chaotic start to this season, but a fun one nonetheless. 2 first-time winners to start the NASCAR Cup Series season. We'll see if we can get a third good at Homestead. We'll talk to you later this week. I've been Lukas Wacker. He's been Kyle Cushman, signing off for this episode. We will talk to you later this week to preview the Homestead races.